So today we're going to talk about what I think is an incredibly important subject. It is community college. And before I bring this incredible guest on, I want to hit you with four numbers right off the top. 40% of first-time college students go to community college, not four-year universities, community college. People who graduate community college can earn up to 30% more in their careers over their lifetimes. Right now, nationally, the graduation rate at community colleges is 31% over the last year, when I say right now. And in Chicago, at the city colleges of Chicago, where tens of thousands of students go to 7 different colleges, the graduation rate is 23%. That's taken as a whole, the entire student population, okay? I have an incredible guest. You're gonna see her side by side with me. Her name is Paige Ponder. She is the CEO and has been of 1 Million Degrees, the scholarship project in Chicago that I've been involved with for a long time. She took over as CEO in 2012, so 8 years. And I can tell you that she transformed this organization and what it's done for community college students in the city of Chicago and other community colleges in Illinois, and probably beyond Illinois in terms of thought leadership and presenting at conferences. She is an expert on community college and increasing graduation rates, which 1 Million Degrees has. And we're going to talk to Paige about how. I just want to, first of all, smiling face, my friend, thank you for doing this. It's a pleasure to be side by side with you. And I've been so excited, as you know, to have a video record of you talking about what you and OMD have accomplished and what can be accomplished in what I think is one of the most undervalued resources in this country. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me on.
It is my pleasure. It is my pleasure. So just a tad more about Paige. Before 1 Million Degrees, she was CEO for Project Exploration. That's a Chicago nonprofit that focused on STEM programs and expanding it for more students to be involved across the city. Prior to that, she was Officer of Student Support and Engagement at the Chicago Public Schools. She has deep experience in this stuff. A BA from Princeton, an MBA. So we're talking about leadership a little later too. From the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. So we're going to talk about those statistics, how 1 Million Degrees and your team has moved those statistics, what there is to learn from it, and so forth. But I want to start with a personal question for you. I want people to get to know this because I know you. I want them to know you. What has inspired you to give almost the last decade of your life to community college advancement and education generally, but you chose community college to put your time, talents, and energy into for nearly 10 years?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I was interested in this job, applied for this job, because my passion is in education and my interest always has been so I was raised by educators. My dad, both my parents are retired now. My dad was a professor of curriculum and instruction, so he did teacher education. And my mom was a high school English teacher for 40 plus years. And so education is sort of in my blood. I specifically tried not to go into the family business, but then it pulled me back. But, you know, I'm not an educator in terms of, I never had an interest in being in the classroom. Right. And frankly, I don't really, I mean, I love my own children, but educating kids like my own is also not my interest. So I'm interested in people who are using education as a means to change their lives. And if that is what you are interested in, then community college is the place to be. And this is what I did at Chicago Public Schools. I worked in dropout prevention and recovery. So keeping students in school and building systems to keep them engaged with freshman on track work. Those were my two kind of big initiatives, the things that I dedicated myself to at CPS. So, but when I took this job, when I was, you know, lucky enough to get this job, I didn't have any higher education experience. But I saw the connection to what I had been doing at CPS. And fortunately, you and the board saw that too. And then, you know, proceeded to completely fall in love with community college students and the community college space. And I can't imagine a better place for someone like me who's interested in, you know, the things that motivate me. Like there's no better place to be than community college.
So I started off with those statistics, and let's give people a bigger picture of this and an understanding, especially for most folks who don't know, what the challenges are for community college students and the opportunities and what drives the work at 1 million degrees. I want to let people know that I just want to make this very clear. The OMD mission, and this is an exact quote from the website, to accelerate community college students' progress on career pathways to economic mobility. So the end goal is that they're going to live a good life and be able to get a good job that's fulfilling and it can raise a family, or however they want to become economically upwardly mobile due to their hard work and talent. Let's start with describing the community college student profile and the challenges involved in it and how you try to meet it at 1 million degrees.
Yes. So community college students, first of all, are an incredibly diverse group of people. I mean, you know, they might be 18 coming right out of high school. They could be in their 70s. There's a lot of returning adults, a lot of non-traditional students. And that's one of the many things I love about community college students. They tend to have a lot of responsibility. So they're raising their own families, they're helping to raise other members of their family, they're taking care of elderly parents, they're working at least part-time. Many of our students work full-time, some are working multiple jobs, and they are, they're breadwinners for their families. And also in our program, full-time, we require students to be full-time, so they're also going to school full-time. Now, I will also say that, one of the things I find most interesting, and I reflect on my own experience, being raised by a teacher and a college professor, my dad used to always say, Paige, you're gonna love college. It's a combination of school and camp. And he was right. I did love college, but I understood that college was my destiny, my right, my entitlement, that it was going to happen. It was just a matter of where, right? Where would I go? And our students, that's not the case for them. And it's not because they're any less talented or capable than me or anybody else who's gone to, who believes that college is our right and our entitlement. It's just that, they don't necessarily come from a long line. Most of them are first in their families to go to college, right? And so college, in some cases, even feels like an indulgence because, their families need them to be out there earning money, right? So they fight sometimes against feeling like they're letting their families down by going to college because they need to be working. So it's really complicated, emotionally. And it's just, sometimes I have a moment where I really can feel at a deep level how different my privilege of always being prepared and having 1000% the expectation that I would go to and graduate from college, and also not having any other responsibilities that I had to worry about while I did that. And so it's very different in a lot of ways, but it has zero to do with their talent, their skill, and their drive is their drive to achieve is very often incredibly high. It has to be for them to, persist through all of these, challenges that they're experiencing.
Yeah, I think you and I would both use the term heroic to describe a ton of community college students. I went to a four-year university, didn't even know how lucky I was all those decades ago. And it's similarly why I'm passionate about this too. Look, you see over my shoulder, Change the World, and I have change makers on, and you are one of them. And these young students, we've seen so many times how once they get their education, they kick and scratch and claw, and like you say, a lot of them work while they're going to school, and they have all kinds of other challenges that they just nail, and then they go on to change the world. We've seen ours too. We could go story by story, and maybe you'll tell one at the end. Yeah. So let's take it back now to 1 million degrees and the program and some of the results, and then we'll broaden it out a little bit to community college as a larger challenge and opportunity, especially with what's been exposed in this coronavirus crisis. It gets complex, but in a good way almost.
Right.
in some ways. But let's
Right.
start with, tell folks how 1 million degrees works, what is unique about it, what you found to be working, and what we've all seen now independent studies start reporting, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the 1 million degrees model, which Michael, as you know, because you were there in the beginning, was inspired by the advice and the wisdom and sort of the wish list of a community college professor, right? Many years ago now, who put together this kind of recipe of what she thought her students needed. And we've continued to build on that and evolve that over the last, me, 8 years, and you all 15 years, right? And so the thing that what we create is an integrated and holistic system of supports for students. That the system is built on relationships that they develop. So we have staff that work on 10 different college campuses, and they each support about 60-ish students at that college. And they are thought partners, they're accountability partners, and they build relationships with students that really help us understand, what are their goals, what's their vision, what's their motivation, why are they in college, what are they trying to achieve, and then help to navigate and work through the barriers that are going to come up for anybody along the way. We also we have over 500 volunteers who are matched with our scholars. We look for volunteers across industries, and we try to match scholars with volunteers that are in the industry the scholar wants to go into, to bring in that kind of window into the professional world, a bridge to build additional social capital, to build your network. And they also develop relationships with their scholars. We provide academic supports, additional tutoring if the student needs it, and we provide financial support. So it started as a scholarship for community college students. We've now almost entirely gotten ourselves sort of out of the scholarship business because we focus on serving Pell eligible students. So, there's a whole huge free college movement, which I'm all for, but many students have already been going to community college for free for many years because their Pell grants, because tuition is so low at community colleges, their Pell grants completely cover that cost. So we focus on those students, but we provide an additional stipend of $1,000 a year. Students earn it through their participation in the program, and they use that to defray, other costs associated with going to college, buying their books, paying for childcare, buying gas, internet at home, whatever they might need. It's up to them. We don't track or monitor what they use that money for, because they've earned it. And it is a performance-based stipend. So they earn it through, as I said, participating in the program. We have a rubric that we've developed that, very clearly lays out, these are the kinds of, your GPA needs to be at or above this level. You need to be seeing your professors. You need to be seeing your advisor. You need to be talking to your program coordinator, who's our staff. You need to be engaging with your coach. So it really demystifies, right? Like if I'm a student that I've never done this before, and I don't have anybody in my family to help coach me through this, like this rubric would be at least one piece of, as we say, making the hidden curriculum visible, right? Like it very transparently lays out, this is what you need to do. And so the scholars will assess themselves using this rubric, kind of reflect on their own progress a few times a year. And then our program coordinators do the same. And then their stipends are attached to their performance based on this rubric. So there's a lot of people involved, a lot of moving parts. And some might say, wow, that's really complicated. And sometimes it is, but our belief is, each individual student needs different things at different times, right? So there's no magical formula to kind of surgically deliver the thing that each student needs at any given time, because those needs shift. Like things shift so quickly that we need this strong yet flexible system of relationships and resources and support, and and us staying very up on their performance and their the data that we're getting from the colleges so that we can try to be out in front of what might be down the road, right? If they're not feeling good and they're maybe going to fail their midterm, like we're all over that, because obviously that has big implications for whether they pass the class, right? So we try to stay out in front of things that could derail the student. And that takes a lot of, people in the mix and a lot of systems to help us kind of calibrate and track all those things.
And so to boil it down for folks, the range of support services, academic advising, right, help them navigate the system, coaching, we used to call it mentoring, now it's coaching, one-to-one coaching in most cases, and we try to match a talent or area of expertise and interest, and stipends, and then also tutoring to keep grades up, and accountability is part of this too. And that has made, I want folks to understand, in our view, and I'm going to ask about the external evaluation, all the difference in helping these hardworking students to get through the program and graduate in as few years as possible. Tell folks what you've learned. You're the one who managed with the Poverty Lab at University of Chicago this random control trial test. You are the one who drove it and managed it and got the data and motivated them to do it. And it's early still. We have some early results, and I know that's still going on. What have we learned? What have you learned?
Yeah, so we wanted to do this randomized control trial because we recognize that so students who opt into our program is a voluntary program. We recruit students into it. Students who raise their hands to do something like this are potentially different than the general population because they're motivated to do a program like this. So that introduces what social scientists call self-selection bias, right? So we really wanted to understand, are we seeing the results that we're seeing? 65% of our students graduate because we're recruiting students who are very likely to graduate already, right? Or what is the impact of the actual program? We really, and the board, and I give you all so much credit for that, has always wanted to truly understand scientifically what impact are we having? Because if we're not seeing any, then we need to do something different, right? With our time and our talent and our treasure. So we are in year 4 of probably an 8-year study. These things take time. It just takes time. The time to achieve the outcomes like graduation have to elapse in order for you to know what's happening. So these are, by their nature, long studies. And so what we are seeing with the first couple of cohorts that we're looking at is we see really big impacts on enrollment in college at all, persistence from fall to spring, so enrolling in both fall and spring, and then persisting full-time, so taking a full-time course load in both fall and spring. And in particular, the big difference that we're seeing is with our students coming right out of high school. So we have always had a mix of students that we recruit who are already in community college, and then we recruit them when they're coming out of high school. And we're seeing a huge difference between the students that we're working with and the students in the control group, especially for those coming from high school. And the thing that was new information for us, we hoped that we would see these impacts on persistence, for sure, and persistence being a leading indicator, obviously, to eventually graduating. But we didn't understand that the impact on enrollment, right? So it looks like our recruitment efforts going out to high schools and saying, hey, come on this journey with us, right? Community college is a great option for you. We will be here to help and support you. It's going to be awesome. Come do it with us. That message seems to be having a pretty significant impact. And what we're seeing is like a doubling, like 100% increase in the students coming out of high school who actually enroll, who are part of our program versus those that are not. And once a student submits an application, then the treatment, our program, begins immediately, which is our team reaching out to the student, calling them, texting them, and saying, hey, have you finished your registration? Have you done your financial aid? So all of those nudges in our business, they're called nudges, seem to be having a real impact on whether students arrive in college at all.
So it's an increase. You have numbers though in terms of enrollment and persistence, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. So I think I should have these permanently seared into my head, but it's,
I'm gonna,
you have them. Okay, perfect.
assist you. I wanted you to say it. 35% increase in full-time enrollment, the earliest result from the study, and a 47% increase in full-time persistence to the next term. And by the way, maybe I should have disclaimed this and said up front, I'm not calling attention to 1 million degrees as any type of promotion, although there would be nothing wrong with that because it's a nonprofit that's doing wonderful work. Paige has just grown this team over a decade, and I get to publicly thank you for what you have done for all of these awesome students. She transformed this organization. But the reason I'm bringing it up is I want folks to know, not just in the community college space, and a lot of them know this and have been studying this, and in New York, they've been doing similar types of work, and I know you're in touch with them, but also to broaden this out. And let's do that now.
Okay.
The great work that you are doing, that 1 Million Degrees is doing, and that's helped, I believe now, more than 2,000 students, which in one way sounds like a lot when we started with 25, but also it's a sliver. You're talking about millions of community college students in this country. Like I said, 40% of first-time college students in this country go to community college. I've used the term for years that community college somehow got treated like the stigmatized stepchild of the higher education system. Mm-hmm. And I don't like saying that, but it's also true in terms of resources from the government, in terms of societally, in terms of local governments, even corporate sponsorships. It is glamorous to support a scholarship for an Ivy Leaguer or something. That is a much more glamorous thing, okay? Mm-hmm. Community college students don't have the same profile. Although when you look at their stories and profile them the way that you have and 1 Million Degrees has, you see that they are extraordinary. They're a hell of a lot more inspiring than what I did in college in a 4-year university. Mm-hmm. Why have you found in your deep experience doing this, Paige, why is community college, which is established also to help local communities to fill their job pipeline, to tailor to economic needs in local communities? I think 1903, the first community college, I believe, was Joliet Community College right in Illinois, and that was part of it. Why is this the case?
Oh, that's a big question.
Take a deep breath and give it a second.
Yeah, so I have found really interesting some of the research that has been coming out recently looking at colleges and universities' contributions to social mobility, right? So what 4-year universities are doing, and the Ivies, and I am an alum of one, are the worst at this, is they are replicating and reinforcing the social and socioeconomic stratification that we have in the country, right? They're not contributing at all to social mobility. The very few low-income students who get into these schools can potentially do really well, but it's such a small number that it doesn't matter, really. Community colleges, on the other hand, have been called engines of social mobility.
Right.
And I love that because that is truly their bread and butter. I mean, they are created for, as I said, low-income students who are trying to, put themselves on a different path and put their families on a different trajectory. That's what community colleges are designed to do. But they don't have the alumni base, right? They don't have the prestige. They don't have, for the most part, faculty who are doing like big prestigious research and getting research grants, right? So, 4-year universities and elite institutions, the professors want to teach as little as possible and do their research and publish. That's what they really want to do, right?
You publish or you perish.
Publish or perish.
Right from higher education?
Right. Community colleges is the opposite, right? The instructors and the professors who are there because they want to teach. And it's not that they don't do research, but that is not nearly as prevalent as it is in four-year universities. So it's an entirely different sort of economy in community college than it is in four-year universities, which frankly, the economy of four-year universities is quite precarious right now, right? I mean, lots of the research saying like this is a huge bubble. You know, universities are putting in like climbing gyms and lazy rivers, and you know, there's also not the sports. You know, elite universities, four-year universities have this huge like sports industrial complex, which brings in tons of money. Community colleges don't have that. So they just have a very different, just almost everything about them is different in a lot of ways, and not as glamorous to invest in.
By the way, that's an interesting point. There's an irony to the term community college. The four-year universities, go Tigers, and the whole, like you're saying, that people hang on to the university they went to for their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even one I went to Indiana University and I watched their football team and cheer for them and bet on them and blah, blah, blah. But I don't go back every year, but I still, even I feel that pride. And the irony, because it creates community, that time of your life, especially at four-year universities and that experience. And the irony is that community colleges, they're much more spread out. They're much more diverse. The students, by the very challenges that we define, which are just facts of life and are badges of honor in my view of these students, and I know in your view, but they don't get to have that community as much. And actually 1 million degrees, I think we've learned that, speak to that for a minute, about the way that these coaching sessions of a couple hundred people at Roosevelt University on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, or maybe even earlier. I haven't been there in a while, to my shame. That has created community and inspired these students and given them something that a lot of them have said, I didn't have this before I was involved in this program. In fact, you don't have to speak to that because I know we agree on it. Let me quote you and get to the next question to broaden this out. So Paige, she's been published in all kinds of places, articles she's written about our accomplishments at 1 million degrees, our students' accomplishments, how the program works. The numbers I quoted at the top of the program were from Crain's Chicago almost last September, so less than a year ago. And in the Chicago Tribune, she's about to publish an article, and I want to quote from this draft and then pose the question right back to her because she answers it. Quote, how do we seize this opportunity to think big and act boldly so that we don't aim for going back to normal, but aim for an improved new reality, one that is more equitable for hardworking community college students, end quote. So I told you to, okay, let's broaden this out and why is the reason, okay? That's, and I asked your opinion. But now I'm asking you, because what this coronavirus thing has done, I think we all have seen, is that it's exposed weaknesses in our system that a lot of us knew existed, but aren't talked about a lot, but have also shown the opportunity. So answer your question there. What does our country need to do? What can we do to make community college higher profile and get more assistance and engagement, given the due that it's deserved and given the students the maximum opportunity to graduate?
So what I argue in this op-ed that you're quoting from is the community colleges, because they are truly in the community, they have relationships with their local employers in an entirely different way than four-year universities do, right? And community colleges play a really important role, not just in bringing new students into higher education, but providing an opportunity for adults who are already out in the world and working to upskill, to retrain, right? So my suggestion is, there's kind of two big ideas. One is, let's continue to invest. Let's double down on investing in community colleges, because if they can become local centers of innovation and have those really deep connections with their employer partners, then the local economy can be more resilient, right? Like if we need to make a big shift, like, I don't know, if there's a global pandemic and all of a sudden everything changes on a dime, community colleges are best positioned to respond to that because they have the closest relationships with the people in their communities. So let's let's invest more in them so that they can fulfill that mission. There's some really exciting examples in Chicago of things that are happening. There's an advanced manufacturing facility that just opened up at Daly College on the southwest side. And so there's lots of examples like that in communities across the country. Let's build on that. And then a related piece, but another big suggestion is, let's focus on the relationships and the support, right? We have learned that community and relationships make all the difference for students. And one of the interesting things that we do at OMD is engage. So we go out to companies and, churches and community groups, and that's where we recruit our volunteer coaches. And what we hear from coaches as they get to know scholars is, oh my goodness, wow, like I would love to have this kind of talent in my company. And they, in a very organic way, often are helping them get jobs either at their companies or a friend's company. And so I think in getting into having a real relationship with students, getting to know them, there's this two-way exchange of information, right? A company, if many of its employees are volunteering to be these coaches for community college students, could be helping to sort of identify talent, develop talent, and giving these students a window into what it's like to work at their company and go into their industry. And students, of course, are getting the benefit of that information. And so there could be this really interesting kind of win-win, right? Where students get the support they need, and then companies engage their employees. And this is something that employees, really enjoy doing. The coaches get at least as much out of the relationship as the students do.
That is for sure.
Then the company can have a really interesting strategy of identifying and developing talent for itself. So, could we think much bigger about how to engage people outside of the walls of the college in supporting students? And OMD happens to have a bit of experience doing that. So I'm hopeful that we can help think through how that might work.
I want to ask you a couple of questions about leadership and what you've learned, and also during this time of crisis. But the last question I want to ask you first about community college students. Tell a story about a student. I know it's probably hard to pick one, but a student that we've worked with that inspired you and inspired other students watching her example or his example.
Yeah. Well,
like I'm asking you to choose one of your kids, right?
I know. I know. I mean, one student who comes to mind, really, really talented, was valedictorian at her high school, but really struggled with seeing herself as a college student, and spent the year after she graduated, working with her mom, cleaning hotel rooms, and eventually decided to give community college a shot. Found her way into the OMD program, and then eventually, completely knocked it out of the park at Truman College, transferred to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign to the School of Engineering, which is really hard to get into.
Really incredible accomplishment.
Pursued electrical engineering. She was one of a tiny number of Latinas in that program. And, she told me, a couple of years ago, she's had all these really cool opportunities to do internships and to work while she's going to finishing her degree at these companies want her so bad that they're like, we'll figure it out. You need to finish your degree, but we also really want you to continue to work with us. And she is so excited about what she's doing. And she told me, kind of very sheepishly, like way under her breath, that just in one of these internships, which isn't even a part-time job, she was making already more than her parents had ever made. And so, you know, that is, not every story is like that, but that is a story. And there's more like that than not. And I mean, this is just what is possible, right? And again, an insanely talented person who, you know, if she had been in a different set of circumstances, right? Like U of I would have been the floor of what she, you know what I mean? Like there was no question that she could do it, but she needed to find within herself that this is, you know, see herself as a college student. And that was a struggle. But she's prevailing. She's not just prevailing. She's
kicking ass.
She totally is. So, so those are the, you know, it's an honor and a privilege. And, I'm just routinely amazed at what our students do.
You know, first of all, I want folks to know, to learn more about, and I'll say this at the end, and we'll wrap up in 5-10 minutes here, but I want to switch gears. But before I do, 1milliondegrees.org is if you want to learn more about this program. If you want to read Paige's article, it has yet to come out, but by the time we post this, it might have come out. But just Google Paige Ponder, Ponder, and Chicago Forward is the series the Chicago Tribune is doing about how we move the city forward. A lot of it's about youth and how we do that. And they were creating this series, I believe, before all of this Corona fiasco started. And I want to switch gears real quick, because part of what I talk about with folks on this program, especially people who have had the experience you have, is what they've learned about leadership and what lessons they can share. You know, you were a leader before you came into 2012 to 1 Million Degrees, but I can tell people from my own experience with it that Paige came in, and although the program had done a lot of good, she put it together in a whole new way, hired an incredible team, and developed this organization into something that it just wasn't 8 years ago. That's a fact. Looking back on when you came in, what's the biggest lesson you would tell yourself then, or someone stepping into those shoes? What's the biggest lesson that you've learned that you could pass on to a leader stepping into a really intimidating role that they're excited about, but also, you know, a little trepidatious about?
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing is give yourself some time to, you know, to get to know people and to figure out what's going on. Like you can't transform something right out of the gate, right? You need to take time to get to know people and to build trust. And one of the things I'm most proud of is, you know, with our board, and I have, you know, 18 or 19 bosses, I feel that I've done that, right? If I say, I feel really strongly about this, this is what we need to do, here's why, then I'm very confident that I'm going to have the support of the board, right? But that's because we have all gotten to know each other. You know what motivates me, you know how I work, and you know, my word is good, right? But that takes time. So I think that's one thing is, you know, you're not gonna just completely transform something overnight. And then I guess the other thing I would say is, not only don't be afraid to think big, but you have to think big, right? And, you know, we've been very, I would say fearless in trying to grow this program. I'm not sure that it would have happened in the way that it did with another group of people. Like the OMD board is visionary and aggressive and relentless and not afraid. And I love that about you guys. And so we have to think about, you know, how does this affect the situation at scale, right? Like what does this mean for the whole city, even when we're really small, right? You have to kind of take your immediate experience and then start to expand upon that. Like, what are the concentric circles of meaning that this has, and how can we use that to influence big systems that are so much bigger than we are? So, and I would say we're we're still at the beginning of that journey, and that's hard. I mean, in the nonprofit sector, it is dang hard to get big enough to achieve any kind of change at scale. It's hard to influence systems, but we're trying. You have to try even when it's hard. And then I would say, you know, the leadership lesson that I'm still in the process of learning, and I'm still trying, I need to get so much better at this, is, you know, I'm very mission oriented. I'm very mission driven. And if you're going to get between me and what I know needs to get done, then we're going to have a problem. But I think as a leader that's becoming more seasoned and more mature, I think there's a time and place for that. But I'm starting to understand my job now is much more about building the team and developing the next set of leaders and kind of setting the vision and strategy, and then trying to get out of the way as much as possible. And I think, you know, that kind of, that's like the next evolution for any leader, is it's really not about doing the work. It's about developing the people who are going to do the work. And so still working on that. But I think that's the next step in my own leadership journey.
Right, but you're never leaving 1 million degrees.
No, it sounds like I might be, you know, like leaving the planet permanently, but I'm not. I don't plan to go anywhere. But it's almost like, you know, and I think this is also like reaching middle age as a human, that you start to think about, you know, kind of the legacy you're leaving versus like bulldozing your way through the mountain that you see in front of you. But I think there's, you know, it's a both and. I don't think it's an either or, but that is something though that as a younger person, like I just really didn't get. And maybe that was okay, because I wasn't ready to develop other people yet.
It's called the wisdom of experience for a reason,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And by the way, I'm glad you mentioned the board. It gives me an opportunity to not just publicly thank you, but boy, that group of people who started this, David Shearer, a visionary who first approached me, his wife Rose Lizarraga, you know, they seeded this thing. Connie Mixon, an incredible professor whom you mentioned earlier, I wanted to, she and Tanya Panopoulos together created this mentor curriculum and program. I mean, we all did, but really those two, and David and Michael Episcope, and I can't thank all of them enough. And I think we'd agree that David Shearer, most of all these years as board chair, he has stepped up every year, every minute, and has a talent for leadership that is extraordinary in what you two have done together, in conjunction with the whole team, obviously, but as leaders together. It's been like watching a dance for almost 10 years. I can't thank them enough. I can't thank you enough for everything you've done. And I hope that, look, this is a hard subject. We could talk for hours about community college. There's a minutia that we could get into, and there's policy, and that's hard to do in one podcast, in one video program. But I hope that people got a good look from you, from your perspective, at what the challenges are, what the opportunities are, what the successes are, and what ways are available for us, especially during this time that is exposed and shown community college for what it really could be. Yeah. You know, just at a normal time, but especially the way things are changing. Thank you so much for doing this, Paige, for coming on and talking about it. It's an honor and it's a pleasure.
Thank you, Michael. Same. It's been really fun. I appreciate the time.
I'm glad to hear that. Like I said, Paige Ponder, CEO of 1 Million Degrees, and you'll be able to find her writings in Cranes and Chicago Tribune at 1milliondegrees.org. You know, I'll end where I started. Community college students work their asses off. A lot harder than I ever worked when I went to a four-year school. I've seen it up close. I've seen their spirit. I've seen their strength. Seen their resilience, and it's time that those students, those faculty, those administrators in the community college systems all over this country were given the proper degree of respect. And I don't just mean words, I mean resources and action. And I am hoping that, that people will have heard Paige and her insight into this process today. And I'm hoping that, that they'll talk about it and that it will lead to changes, because we're going to keep talking about it. I'm Michael Golden. Thanks for joining us on this episode of The Golden Mean.